Hello, my dear friends, and welcome back to our channel Mysterious Untold Books. Introduction. In the modern workplace, what truly drives high performance? For decades, organizations have focused on metrics, processes, and management structures, often treating employees as interchangeable resources. Yet many workplaces struggle with disengagement, high turnover, and underperformance despite implementing countless management fads and employee engagement initiatives. The answer, surprisingly, lies in our biology. Drawing on groundbreaking neuroscience research, we now understand that human beings are fundamentally social creatures wired for connection and trust. When we map the neurochemical foundations of human social behavior onto organizational dynamics, we discover that trust isn't just a nice-to-have cultural element, it's the essential catalyst for sustained high performance. Through rigorous experiments measuring brain activity, blood chemistry, and behavioral outcomes, we see how specific management practices trigger the release of oxytocin, the trust molecule, creating environments where people naturally collaborate, innovate, and fully engage their talents. This neuromanagement approach provides a systematic framework of 8 factors, forming the acronym oxytocin, that leaders can implement to build cultures of trust, purpose, and ultimately joy that drive exceptional organizational performance. Chapter 1. The Neuroscience of Trust: How Oxytocin Drives Performance. Trust between colleagues isn't just a subjective feeling. It has a biological foundation in the human brain. The neurochemical oxytocin plays a crucial role in our social interactions, serving as the biological basis for trust and cooperation. When someone demonstrates trust in us, our brains respond by releasing oxytocin, which makes us more likely to reciprocate that trust and behave cooperatively. This neurochemical response evolved as a survival mechanism. As inherently social creatures, humans have always depended on group cooperation to survive. The release of oxytocin creates feelings of connection and empathy, motivating individuals to act in ways that benefit the group rather than just themselves. In high-trust environments, this neurological response creates a positive feedback loop. Trust begets more trust, strengthening social bonds and enhancing collaboration. Importantly, oxytocin interacts with other neurochemicals in complex ways. Moderate stress, the kind experienced when facing a difficult but achievable challenge, can actually stimulate oxytocin production, enhancing team cohesion. However, chronic stress inhibits oxytocin release, undermining trust. Similarly, testosterone, which increases with status and competition, can reduce empathy if not balanced with oxytocin-promoting behaviors. The neuroscience of trust explains why conventional management approaches often fail. Command and control structures trigger stress responses that inhibit oxytocin, while monetary incentives can crowd out the intrinsic rewards associated with cooperation. By contrast, organizations that implement practices promoting oxytocin release, like recognizing achievements, providing autonomy, and fostering genuine social connections, create environments where collaboration flourishes naturally. Rugby teams, for example, show synchronized oxytocin increases during warm-ups, preparing them to cooperate intensely during competition, a pattern that effective workplaces can replicate. Chapter 2. The Oxytocin Framework: 8 Essential Trust Factors. The Oxytocin Framework represents a comprehensive approach to building high-trust cultures, derived from neuroscience research on how the brain responds to social interactions. This isn't just a clever acronym. Each letter corresponds to a specific management practice that triggers the release of oxytocin and other positive neurochemicals in the brain. The 8 essential trust factors are ovation, recognition for achievements, expectation, challenging but achievable goals, yield, autonomy in execution, transfer, self-management, openness, information sharing, caring, intentionally building relationships, invest, enabling whole person growth, and natural, authentic leadership. Each factor represents a different pathway to stimulate the brain's trust circuitry, with each explaining between 51% and 84% of the variation in organizational trust when measured across companies. These factors work synergistically rather than independently. For example, setting clear expectation without providing autonomy in execution creates stress without engagement. Similarly, recognizing achievements, ovation, has more impact when information about performance is transparent, openness. The framework provides a systematic way to diagnose cultural weaknesses and implement targeted improvements. The power of this approach lies in its neurological foundation. Traditional management practices often assume rational economic behavior, but humans are fundamentally social beings whose brains respond to social signals in predictable ways. When people feel trusted, their brains produce oxytocin, which enhances collaboration, creativity, and commitment. By implementing these 8 factors, organizations create environments that work with, rather than against, human neurochemistry. Consider how different workplaces feel. In low-trust environments, people expend energy protecting themselves from criticism and politics, while in high-trust organizations, that same energy goes toward innovation and service. The oxytocin framework provides a roadmap for creating the latter, cultures where the brain's social reward system aligns perfectly with organizational goals. Chapter 3. Leading with Vulnerability, the Power of Natural Leadership. Natural leadership represents an approach to leadership centered on authenticity and vulnerability rather than dominance and infallibility. The research reveals something counterintuitive. Leaders who show vulnerability, admitting mistakes, asking for help, and acknowledging limitations actually build stronger trust with their teams than those who project an image of perfection. This finding challenges traditional notions of leadership that emphasize authority and omniscience. When leaders maintain a facade of infallibility, they create psychological distance between themselves and their teams. Conversely, showing vulnerability creates connection through a neurological process. When leaders reveal their human side, it triggers oxytocin release in observers, creating empathy and strengthening social bonds. This neurochemical response motivates people to support a leader and work harder towards shared goals. The biology behind the phenomenon is fascinating. High-status individuals, including leaders, typically have elevated testosterone levels, which can diminish empathy and increase self-focus. This lead singer syndrome, named after the self-absorption often seen in band frontmen, can be counteracted through conscious vulnerability. Effective leaders recognize this biological tendency and take steps to overcome it, removing status symbols, sharing personal stories, and demonstrating genuine interest in others' perspectives. Natural leadership manifests in specific behaviors, spending time on the front line to understand how work really happens, using first names rather than titles, listening more than speaking, and acknowledging mistakes publicly. When the CEO of a major tech company admits, "I don't know the answer here," or when a startup founder shares his fears about a new venture, they are not showing weakness. They are building trust. Companies like Zappos, where the CEO dresses up in costume at company meetings, or Southwest Airlines, where executives help load baggage, demonstrate how authentic leadership creates cultures where people feel safe to contribute their best ideas and efforts. Chapter 4. Purpose Beyond Profit, Creating Meaningful Organizations. Purpose extends far beyond making money. It represents a transcendent reason an organization exists and how it improves lives. While every business has a transactional purpose, the everyday operations that generate revenue, truly exceptional organizations articulate and embody a transcendent purpose that answers the deeper why behind their work, creating meaning that inspires extraordinary commitment and performance. This distinction matters because humans are inherently meaning-seeking creatures. When we understand how our work serves others or contributes to something larger than ourselves, our brains respond by releasing oxytocin and dopamine, neurochemicals that enhance focus, creativity, and perseverance. Purpose activates brain regions associated with intrinsic motivation, creating a powerful driver of performance that money alone cannot match. Purpose manifests through narrative, the stories organizations tell about their founding, their values, and the difference they make. Effective purpose narratives follow the hero's journey structure, featuring tension, emotion, and transcendence. They show ordinary people doing extraordinary things to serve others. Companies like KPMG transformed engagement by collecting thousands of employee stories about how their work inspires confidence and empowers change, while others like LinkedIn embed their purpose, connect the world professionals to make them more productive and successful into every aspect of operations. The real power of purpose emerges when people experience it directly rather than just hearing about it. When hospital fundraisers meet scholarship recipients whose education they help fund, or when technology workers visit communities using their products, they witness firsthand how their work improves lives. Organizations that create opportunities for employees to see their impact, whether through customer interaction, community service, or regular storytelling, tap into neurological pathways that money can't access. Studies show that organizations with a clear, compelling purpose outperform their peers by substantial margins, with one analysis finding that high-purpose companies achieve stock returns 400% higher than the S&P 500 average over an 11-year period. Chapter 5. Trust and Joy, the formula for exceptional engagement. The equation, joy is equal to trust times purpose, captures a profound insight about human motivation and engagement at work. This isn't merely a metaphorical equation, but a relationship supported by extensive neuroscience research showing how trust and purpose interact to create states of intense engagement, satisfaction, and even joy in the workplace. Joy at work is fundamentally different from happiness. While happiness is often passive and dependent on external circumstances, joy emerges from the process of overcoming meaningful challenges alongside trusted colleagues. Neurologically, when we work in environments with high trust and clear purpose, our brains release both oxytocin, the trust molecule, and dopamine, the reward molecule, creating a neurochemical state of focus, energy, and satisfaction that we experience as joy. The multiplicative relationship between trust and purpose is significant. Even with a compelling purpose, low trust undermines joy because people expend energy protecting themselves rather than pursuing the mission. Conversely, high trust without purpose creates comfortable but uninspired environments. When both elements are present, they amplify each other. Purpose gives meaning to the relationships formed through trust, while trust creates the psychological safety needed to fully embrace challenging work. Field experiments verify this relationship. In one study at Zappos, employees who discussed the company's purpose showed a 10% increase in positive mood, a 16% increase in feelings of closeness to colleagues, and 15% higher productivity compared to a control group. What's remarkable is that approximately 55% of these results came from having the right people, those with agreeable, warm personalities, while 45% came from the cultural intervention of discussing purpose, showing that both selection and culture matter. The Danish, who report the highest levels of workplace joy globally, have a specific word for it, arbeidsglæde. Their approach exemplifies the trust-purpose formula: reasonable work hours, clear expectations, flat organizational structures, transfer of control, lifelong learning, investment in growth, and meaningful work. Danish employees consistently rank purpose as the most important factor in their workplace satisfaction, twice as important as having a great manager. Chapter 6. Implementing Trust. Practical Management Experiments. Implementing a culture of trust requires systematic experimentation rather than sweeping pronouncements. The most effective approach treats culture change as a series of small-scale controlled experiments that follow a clear methodology. Measure the current state, identify an intervention, implement it with clear communication, measure the results, and iterate based on findings. This experimental approach begins with accurate measurement. The olfactor survey, developed through neuroscience research, quantifies organizational trust and the 8 oxytocin factors, providing a baseline from which to work. Organizations typically find significant variation in these factors. In West, enabling whole person growth and ovation, recognition are commonly the lowest. By identifying specific weaknesses, leaders can target interventions precisely rather than implementing generic culture programs. Each intervention should focus on one factor and follow a clear structure. For example, to improve openness, a company might institute regular town hall meetings where executives share strategic information and answer unfiltered questions. For yield, they might experiment with self-managed work schedules in one department. For caring, they might implement a Code Lavender program where colleagues experiencing stress receive visible support from peers. Communication is crucial throughout the process. Colleagues should understand what's changing, why it matters, and how long the experiment will run. This transparency builds trust in itself while setting appropriate expectations. After the experimental period, both objective metrics, like productivity or turnover, and subjective measures, like engagement or energy, should be reassessed to determine impact. Real-world examples demonstrate this approach's effectiveness. One consulting company implemented a series of targeted interventions based on their olfactory results, removing hierarchical barriers like executive dining rooms, instituting whole-person reviews focused on growth rather than judgment, and training managers to be coaches rather than controllers. Within 6 months, trust increased 5.8%, purpose alignment rose 7%, and self-reported productivity improved 4.3%. More dramatically, dreading being at work fell by 14%. By treating culture change as a series of humble experiments rather than top-down mandates, organizations build trust through the very process of improving it.
Chapter 7. The ROI of Trust, Measuring Culture's Bottom Line Impact. The business case for creating high-trust cultures is compelling when examined through rigorous data analysis. Trust isn't just a nice-to-have cultural element. It delivers measurable returns across multiple performance dimensions, from productivity to profitability, retention to innovation. Comprehensive data from nationally representative surveys reveals striking differences between high-trust and low-trust organizations. Employees and companies scoring in the top quartile of organizational trust versus the bottom quartile report being 50% more productive, having 106% more energy at work, and being 76% more engaged. They take fewer sick days, show greater creativity in problem solving, and are 88% more likely to recommend their company as a place to work. Perhaps most telling, these employees earn an average of $6,450 more annually, suggesting that high-trust companies generate enough additional value per employee to support substantially higher compensation. The physiological mechanisms behind these performance gains are evident in neurological studies. When colleagues in high-trust organizations face workplace challenges, they show markedly different biological responses than those in low-trust environments. Their oxytocin levels increase more significantly during teamwork, 228% higher in one study, and they recover from stress more rapidly after work ends, with stress hormones dropping 221% faster. These biological patterns translate directly into sustained energy, creativity, and collaborative capacity. When calculating return on investment, the numbers are compelling. Analysis shows that moving an organization up just one quartile in trust would increase productivity by 25%, retention by 27%, and reduce sick days significantly. For a 500-person company, this represents approximately $5.09 million in additional annual revenue. Over 10 years, the present value of this improvement exceeds $26 million, justifying substantial investment in culture-building initiatives. External analyses confirm these findings. Organizations on Fortune's 100 Best Companies to Work For list, which heavily weights trust factors, outperformed their peers by 73.5% in stock returns over a 21-year period. This isn't coincidental. High-trust companies can attract and retain better talent, inspire discretionary effort, and foster innovation that drives sustainable competitive advantage. As talent shortages intensify globally due to demographic shifts, the ability to create engaging, trust-based cultures will increasingly separate market leaders from also-rans. Thank you for listening. Audiobook by Mysterious Untold Books.